So welcome to Uncensored Hot Femme. Today I am here with Sam Gibbs Morris, a man I have been following for I don't know how long on Instagram. And I jumped into his DMs to ask him to join me since I'm having my male series on the podcast that feels so important for me to have men here to represent well, your species.
Yeah, our side of the world.
Yeah, because I can just tell you, Sam, before I introduce you even more, that the thought of this podcast have been really growing inside of me for such a long time. And it feels like I have become the woman to start the podcast, and I made the decision. And I didn't know that I would have male guests on, but the purpose of
hmm
the podcast was truly to as women take ownership to clean our end of the streets, but also to open our hearts to the masculine and, to bring out all the taboo stuff that
Yeah.
we don't like to touch on in society,
hmm
because that's been my journey around, sexuality and liberation and so on. And then I just felt called to have you on. So what I love about you, Sam, is that I feel like you're such a good representation of a conscious masculine man that also, with so much, like you bring out the wildness, I think,
hmm
but in such a grounded, true way. Because for me that have been around kind of in different spaces, all from, churches to mosques to the tantra world, and like where
Yeah.
conscious men, because
Uh-huh.
I could feel like it's so hard to find, or at least I could feel sometimes it's so hard to find a conscious man. We think we're looking at the exterior, and I feel like you really hold that presence of the true, like raw but grounded masculinity and wildness that I love,
Uh,
because I'm quite a wild girl.
Thank you so much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. If you would tell us more about you with your own words.
Yeah. About me. Yeah, what I do is I like to lead men into an edge hunting expedition of their own inner wilderness. A lot of men avoid the wildness. They avoid the rage or the sexual feelings or anger even because what I've found is that most of the men, and I say most, I mean I haven't met one yet that doesn't have this, is that at some point there was some sort of expression of our masculinity that got sideways. And so we immediately in that moment decided to shut it down. And whether that would be sexually, whether that would be anger, whether that would be some sort of primal rage, um, it hurt ourselves or another being at some point. And so in that moment, we decided, okay, that one's got to be stuffed down. It's not good. It's going to cause pain. And so the real liberation in this wildness that we talk about, this like the raw, the edgy, the actually alive masculine, is being able to tap back into that energy and re-relate to it and relate to it in a way that we befriend it and we understand that it is part of our life force. And when it is uncontained, yeah, it is very dangerous and destructive. But when it is contained, it is it's vital and it's attractive and it's magnetic, and it gives us a level of confidence that we can bring forth to our primal protector provider, and bring it to relationships where we can fully lead and lead in our lives. And so, really, and I say I'm conscious masculinity mentor. It's based in leadership. How do you lead yourself, and how do you lead others in the world? And so that's kind of what I do in the world.
Yeah, thank you so much for the work that you do. And I love that you talk about the rage, the sexuality, the edgy. And I mean, I'm not a man, but I had my experience of
hmm
my rage and my anger as a woman and the edgy stuff. But I can from my point of view see that men sometimes, as you say, because as a woman you can feel a man's rage beneath the
Yeah.
surface. And in some ways, for me, when I think about it, it feels more secure, even though it's maybe not secure if someone lash out at you, but at least like this passive aggressiveness, this I feel the shame men hold around their sexuality. And the more I liberated my sexuality, I became even more magnetic, I felt, to men. But I could feel how their nervous system was kind of tightened because when I came near them, some of them couldn't hold it. And I
Yep.
was making myself wrong, I'm too much,
Hmm.
and so on. And that also could provoke my aggression because it's like becomes such an interaction. It can be really painful also as a woman because I don't want to play like I think as women our sexuality we don't have to display it in that sense, but like when you have liberated your sexuality that for me was so repressed, having that like I want a man to be able to hold this rage, this sexual energy and
Hmm.
contain it because I don't want to miss out on that experience and I don't want to stuff myself down because I have gone through so much, shame, liberation that but I'm like, where are the men? Because on the other side, I have sometimes like had lovers that was really wild in bed, but they still had like an inability to contain it and control it. And as a woman, I feel like my cycle, it goes, you know.
Yeah.
So you must be able to contain it as man and to attune to your woman and like, yeah. So I feel that the work you do is so important.
Thank you. Yeah. It's I love the way you speak about that, about how it was like the kind of the butting up against the walls of it, where it was like, oh gosh, like you as the feminine, I'm tapping into this rewilding of myself and this remembrance of my deep sexual desires, and then men will oftentimes recoil, and they can. It's so true that as soon as if the man has not integrated his masculine, has not done the initiation of all of his own primal urges, essentially holding himself, he meets a woman like yourself, or my wife, and it's like, oh, wait, that's too much. Like, and he may not even be aware that it's too much, but other things will happen. Like he'll hit the eject button, he'll sabotage, he'll do things to keep the boundary up in a very, very shadowy way.
Yeah, shutdown have happened
Oh yeah.
and telling me I'm moaning too loudly and
Yeah. It's wild that all the different like ways that the nervous or the ego can be like, oh, it's too much, and we're really what it like the thing about and this is the feminine wound is I am too much. The masculine wound is I am not enough. And so they play beautifully off each other because really, like if the man says I'm too much or you're too much or you're moaning too much, it has very little to do with you. It's that he is just feeling his inability to hold it in that moment, and and again, uninitiated projection. You're too much. Can you simmer down? And I talk about this a lot with a lot of the guys that I work with. Is where on the spectrum of "I got you"? Because "I got you" is those are three big words, like really big words, and if you're going to say them, you better mean them. But a lot of men will say "I got you," but underneath that is I got you as long as it's my way, as long as you don't moan too loud, as long as you're not that wild. I got you to a certain extent. Whereas the true conscious masculine has the range and the capacity to say, moan, baby. Like I got you no matter what you do. Take me where you want to take, like, let's go. Where are we going
hang
today?
out.
Like I will hold you and you lead the way. Like I will go deep with you. I will go high with you. I will go everywhere with you. And I got you in all of it. And that's the beauty of the true like tapped in conscious masculine.
Yeah, and as a woman, I feel like it becomes hard because, I don't want to shame men because if they are unaware, it's not their fault either. So I don't want
Yeah.
to put more shame on their sexuality.
Yep.
But it becomes hard for me to navigate because I don't want a man also that is just wild in the bedroom. Like I want the fullness of the masculine in all
Yeah.
areas, and because in some parts of my liberation, I could be with men that couldn't, it wasn't partner material maybe, but
Hmm.
so I'm like, I guess, awareness, what comes up is awareness is so important because if you don't even know it, and for me it becomes hard because I can tell someone, I don't want them to tell me that I'm moaning too loudly, so how could I tell him that he is unaware? It's like it becomes so, I think it's hard.
Yeah, oh, it's absolutely hard. It's absolutely hard. And this is where like because men will have that shame. It's shame of like maybe they lose their erection or they come too soon or it's on both sides. And so I think one of the things is understanding that we're both human. Every interaction, as spiritual as you are, as conscious as you are, is a very human experience, like a grounded 3D human experience that's happening in all these interactions. And I think when we can develop compassion for each other in that, and I've run into the shame monster quite not often, but it's not something that ever like gets to be exiled or goes away. Like it'll come up in a moment, and the thing is two things. Is one is how much safety has been established, and I'll speak from the man's perspective here. How much safety has been established in my relationship that I can be in my shame for a little bit to allow it to move through me, and then how willing am I to not shy away and just want to run, and that I think is what is the beauty of the human interaction and the way that we hold each other is so important in this.
Yeah, and I mean, since I am single and I'm dating, it's hard for me how much because I feel like I have gone into to situationships and stuff where I
Hmm.
have been understanding and not to say because I feel like I have gotten almost always what I needed out of that container um until it, was completed. But
Yeah,
like how much should I give to someone early on because I want to give, but how much should I give and like how much
yeah,
understanding should I have and like if if I'm telling it to slow down because I know that I can be triggering if we go too fast, like because
hmm,
I don't only value sex and sexuality, I value so many other things too about intimacy.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not only that.
yeah. Intimacy is such a wide, beautifully wide array of things. I mean, everything from, this is intimate. Like we're having an intimate conversation here. And then there's the intimacy with, the eye gazing. And then there's the sexual intimacy. There's intimacy of adventure and joy. And intimate, like, and so, I think that as you talk about like the beginning of things, whether it's a
Mhm.
situationship or friends with benefits or, whatever it looks like, how it starts, dating. Um, there's an animal thing that happens. Our bodies are speaking long, like once our minds get involved, I'm not going to go as far as to say it's too late, but it's when things get a little, that's when we start thinking, oh my God, am I moaning too loud? Oh my God, is this guy safe? Oh my God, is she going to, if I don't get hard, is she going to judge me? The mind's already kicked on when if it's gotten to the point of the mind thinking those things, the body has already detected unsafety. And so this is part of like the somatic work that's so important here is that when we can tap back into our bodies and start listening to how our animal bodies are communicating with each other, we can, things get accelerated. The safety and the intimacy and the depth and all that stuff is accelerated and welcomed because our animal bodies have already detected that this person is safe. But we as a society have shut down, numbed out that animal body in a big way. And so part of the rewilding that we're talking about here and like the tapping back into these primal urges is dropping back into the body, trusting the sacral. What's my sacral response? What's my heart response? What's my energetic response? Like was I at an 8 and when I met you I dropped to a 4? or vice versa. And so I think like that's a big thing to work with people on, that I work with people on, is how do you learn to trust the body's instincts, the wisdom of the body.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, because I meet some men and I can feel like this could be my person because
Yep.
I listen to my heart and I listen to my sacral and as you say, like I know my body has already told me the truth, but it can be like just something like someone touching me and shying away and I can feel their insecurity or
Yeah.
like and that creates insecurity in me and it becomes such a snowball
Hmm.
effect and like how can I navigate through this like yeah and also as you say we're humans so that means I told you before we started this recording that I had a week where I went through a lot of things and actually a lot of shame. Again,
Mm.
it came up and I had to really look at where am I still too reactive, like
Hmm.
as a woman, where I'm actually also creating unsafety for the men I date.
Mm.
Because even if someone do come with some insecurity, if I could hold it, maybe it could be different, because I don't think it's just men's responsibility to hold me like we hold each other.
Yeah. Oh, well, absolutely, 100%. And this is like, and then zoom out on that. And I love that you said that because it's so important to recognize that. It's so easy it's almost like it's um, there's, there's a, there's a very shadowy side of ownership. And people like we tend to take on too much ownership sometimes, and then we don't recognize like and doing that like in a dynamic like this, taking the proper amount of ownership is great, but taking too much ownership, one is it exhausts the person taking it on, and it also robs the other person of an experience. If we're always taking too much ownership and trying to meet someone where they're at all the time, or like too much responsibility, taking all the responsibilities on me, no, it's not sustainable, and it's not fair, and it dulls the experience for both people. And so I think that as you touched on that, it's so great to understand that like once we interact, like once we connect, this is a co-creation. Absolutely a co-creation. 100%, 100%. We are both in this, and what do we get to co-create from this moment forward as two people that start by holding themselves and then learn how to hold each other with the language of the body and the energetic words or the energetic communication that starts happening. Where do we get to meet each other and see each other in that?
I love that you say that because I do tend to take a lot of ownership, and maybe
Hmm.
sometimes I don't, but I think when you can feel someone beneath the surface, it's like seeing this shining diamond. And I know it's a default too, but it's like, and your body feels it, and you can feel like someone maybe wanting to let go, but they don't do it. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it is as a man because I can understand what you talked about in the beginning, like maybe you hurt someone because I know that men want to keep I believe that most men want to keep women safe, like that's what I hear from most
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. Absolutely true. Um, and if that man doesn't feel safe in his own world, inner world, outer world, he will eventually see the woman as a threat because that's what relationships do. Like we spend so much time with this person, they're eventually going to point at the things that we have not healed, don't feel exactly free in. And, we can talk about like, oh, how healed do I have to be in a relationship? There, healed as a word is not really accurate. Like there's always going to be something. The thing is like how much of our own wounding, how much of our own shame, how much of our own pain are we able to relate to and hold ourselves so that it doesn't end up being, you know, bleeding onto somebody else? Because it's really easy to project and it's really easy to get into the ego and, you know, make it me against you, when in reality everything that comes up in a dynamic is me and you against the thing, is what the end goal is. And so when we don't have the proper containment of our own, when we haven't, if we've done the work, and this goes for men and women, if we've done the work to know thyself, like at the bottom line, to know thyself and know our shadows, know our nervous system responses, what are our conditioned tendencies, what are our diminishers, like where do we slip out of integrity? If we've done the work to know that, getting into relationships will push us to those edges. But with the knowledge of it, we can see it coming from a mile away and say, and kind of announce it, call it out. And then if we go back to the awareness, like having the awareness of self is the most important thing that we can ever bring to the table, because that allows the other person to have the space to also be fully expressed.
Yeah. But I don't know what your experience is, but I feel like so many people think they are aware. Like
Yeah.
and then I'm like, yeah, because many can tell me about their issues, but I don't really often hear what they are doing about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so then I can ask, okay, so what do you need when you go into that? Because I can see that they still hold so much shame, and I can never save them from their shame. Like I can
Hmm.
save space, but I can save them from their shame.
Yeah.
Like I can meet someone and ask them what they need, because that's super good if someone knows that, but still like, and what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
because awareness is still like number one, but the step after, like,
Action. Yeah. Awareness without action is just pain.
yeah.
Awareness with action is, you know, you can call it healing, we can call it transformation, we can call it development, evolution, whatever we want to call it. But you're absolutely right. If there's awareness and no action, it's okay, great. Then we get into like, if it's like a mothering or a fathering situation where, you know, the polarity gets all screwed up.
Yeah, and I really have to watch myself because some men push my buttons, where I want, where it's like, okay, and then sometimes I feel like I can become too passive because I don't want to become the mother, because I think it's
Yeah.
icky. I think
Hmm.
it's all
Yeah.
the things. And I can see maybe sometimes, even though I've done so much work, that maybe I do trigger daddying in some men too, even though I try to do my best, to stay away from there. But
Yeah. I mean, we're going to trigger each other. That's that's it. Like and that this is the thing, is like, what's our capacity to repair once a trigger happens? And I think on a macro, the awareness that like I'm going to trigger you and you're going to trigger me, especially the deeper we get and the longer we're together, you know, we're going to learn to navigate those triggers and we're going to learn what those triggers are. And I heard this a long time ago, and it's one of the best kind of lenses to put on this thing, is that I want to know all your wounds. Not so that I can. It's a concept of, I want to know all your wounds, not so that I can know you better, not so that I can weaponize them against you. And so I think a lot of times that it's easy to slip into the weaponization of wounds. Oh, your little girl's here, or oh, that's your teenage boy. Your anger, with all that angst or whatever it is. And like instead of using that as like a compassionary tool, it's more of a weaponary tool, and that's when things get really sideways, and that's when conflict resolution gets further away, and the conflict grows.
I really love that you bring up around the wounds, and I think it's important too, because if I don't know your wounds, I know they will come at me anyway. So
Yeah,
please
yeah,
tell me. But
yeah.
my experience have been for some time last year was that when I dated, people wanted to, almost on date one, trauma share and stuff like that. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't really need to know your exact traumas right now. Like,
Hmm.
I felt like that because I could feel this sense. That's where my buttons got triggered because
Yeah.
can we get it to know each other? Because we don't have to share the depth of our wounds with just anyone, maybe. I don't know if you have any reflections on that.
Yeah. I feel it's very, you're right. There's a too soon on on that, I think. And too soon is a very relative term. Too soon could be first date, too soon could be 10th date, too soon could be on a phone call before our first date. Who knows when that's going to be? There's an element of there's a young energy around that. And when I say young, I mean one of the things that I see a lot is that there's a stage that comes with most things, and healing is a big one. Healing, consciousness, personal development, transformation. I call it the baby vampire stage. So I don't know if you've watched any vampire movies, but when a person gets turned to a vampire, they're essentially a baby vampire, and they're just ravenous and like, rah, crazy and everything. I'll eat anything. I'm just like they go nuts. And I see a lot of people when they first get on the path, or they first learn about their traumas, it's very much a baby vampire energy of kind of recklessness with it. And so on the other side of that is where the containment comes in, because it's the pendulum swing, right? I've been suppressing my traumas for 15 years. Oh my gosh, I'm aware of my traumas, and it feels so good to talk about them, in men's groups or women's groups or therapy or coaching. Let me just share it with the world. Let me just share it with everybody. And somewhere in the middle there is the sweet spot where it's like I'm aware of them. When they come up, I will address them and we'll talk about them, work through them. I don't need to lead with them. And I think that's where like discernment comes in, and that's the level of relationship that I have with my pain and my trauma and my shame, is that I don't need it essentially that's using the trauma as a shield. Like, treat me with kid gloves because I'm traumatized. Yeah, and so there's a lot of things that go into that, but for me it is there's a time and a place to share, and it's probably not on the first date.
No, and I'm like, we are more than our traumas. And I've been there too. So I actually had to, first of all, it felt so horrible for me when this started to come up like in my consciousness that like we talk so much about trauma because I don't think we should shy away from pain. So but it triggered me. So it felt like you sharing your trauma puts me in a really bad spot right now
Mm,
because I want to have compassion for you, but you're triggering my mothering wound too.
yeah. Well, and also you're kind of putting me in a position of responsibility for it.
Yeah, so what happened to me when I didn't want to go there because I made the decision that I wouldn't talk about my trauma all the time and on dates,
Yeah.
that I actually felt so really uncompassionate. Like, because I had to shield myself from going
Yeah.
into their
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
So it was now it feels maybe easier, but if someone puts me there, I know that they are not my person because I can't be in that.
Yeah, I mean, in that moment, probably the body's saying, okay, unsafe, uncontained. This man is not capable of holding his own pain, his own trauma. How could he hold mine? How could he hold me? And these are all experiences that we get to kind of register in our body, and then we don't. It's not necessarily like, okay, this is immediately a no, but it's okay. Like, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, and I feel like it's easier for me because I was so triggered, wanting to fix, go into mothering, and so it
Yeah,
made
yeah,
me really aware of my mother,
yeah.
my fixing. So yeah, that's true. But I think also how I respond to someone sharing their trauma, if I go into it, try to depict it like at an instant, I only make it worse. Like
Yeah.
I can just, oh, I'm sorry, So
Yeah.
um, we want the proper amount of compassion without going into it, stepping into the boat.
Yeah. And I mean, this is essentially like, it's the trick. Like, where do we, like, because there's a lot of lines that we're going to be asked to kind of toe along the relationship. Like, how much do we actually hold this person? How much do we, um, like, allow their trauma to exist? How much do we, like, for men, like, one of the most amazing things about a true, safe, conscious relationship is that men cannot fall apart in the world. Like, there's just not space for that. And that's a collective consciousness thing. It's been built into our psyche for thousands of years. So men love to fall apart and have a place for that. And so the line that we get to toe, that you get to toe as the feminine, is how much of that do I hold, allow, and as the man is how much of that how much falling apart do I do before I collect myself and stand back up. And so within relationship, within dynamics, whether it's anything from dating, situationship, conscious relationship, marriage, whatever it is, there are going to be moments when we get to hold a line and of compassion versus full on, diving in. And there's, again, time and a place for everything, but it is, where do we find this balance of our remaining centered in ourselves, remaining centered in holding the other person in their integrity and their dignity while also remaining in ours. And it's tricky. It's tricky, and it gets easier as you do the work and as you know people, but it never gets untricky. It's just that we flex the muscle. We learn how to navigate those waters.
Yeah, what comes up for me is the willingness, because two people have to be willing.
Yeah.
I love that you talk about the edges, because I have kind of a kink for my edges. So I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, I know, I know.
But it needs to be in balance.
Yeah,
But also what comes up, if men, like I would like to say, if any man is listening, if you would just know how much we want to hold your pain, like
yeah,
you are so allowed to fall apart, but we don't
yeah.
want to mother you. Like,
Right.
but I think that's where, like, my heart, like I feel like I don't like the word good woman, but like I feel like a good woman if a man could fall apart in front of me. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Because it means that, again, the body's speaking, and that man feels, he trusts you and feels safe enough and respects you enough to allow you to see all of him.
yeah, but also I want it to be in a way that it doesn't overstep any boundaries, because I've had also, oh, what would be the English word? Kind of manipulative ways to share your feelings. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
I can't hold your feelings if you're not coming with them like this. Like,
Yep. Well, that's victim.
yeah.
That's slipping into the victim consciousness.
So they could say something like, yeah, exactly. And I talk about the victim consciousness also in this podcast. So,
Great.
but yeah, so it puts me like, I want to hold it. And I know
Yeah.
that you so truly want to be nurtured. I know that you want to be seen. I know that you want to be like able to open your heart.
Yeah.
But you try to sneak into it, like it won't work for me. I will
Yeah.
laugh. Like I become Medusa. Like I will. And then they retreat, of
Yeah.
course, because
Yeah.
I become evil sometimes.
Hmm.
Because I become so protective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like, the victim consciousness is it, it the victim consciousness is funny because there's a big payoff like, for the human. There's sympathy, there's compassion, there's attention, there's what feels like love. And victim is a very easy way to get that, and we all have it in us. Like, we all can slip into victimhood. I recognize it pretty immediately now, but it's there for me, like, where I can slip into it. And it's as soon as the recognition happens, like, oh, okay, like let's not go down that road. And so the other thing is it's not very attractive. It's not very, and it doesn't matter if it's coming from the masculine or the feminine. To be in victimhood is it's very unattractive, and if the person is allowing the victimhood to live, that's when it becomes like a red flag of like, oh wow, like this person doesn't have that under control. This person hasn't done the work to hold their victim and look at why their victim is there. Like I'm very aware of all the reasons why, all the versions of me that created victimhood to survive. And so when we can become aware of all those versions, that's when victimhood stops showing up and taking over and running the relationship and being manipulative.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I can fall into victimhood too. It was big when I finally like, oh my God, victim consciousness. Like,
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah, and I agree because I talked with a woman around this that say me around men. Oh my God, all the fuck boys. Then I go to my girlfriends and I tell them about all the fuck boys, and they're like, "Oh my God, what an asshole!" and poor little
Hmm.
you. And like, there are so many steps of the payoff, you know.
Yeah,
And not
yeah,
only.
yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, I agree.
And
So
at the very end of it is righteousness. Like, yes, I'm right.
yes,
All the fuck
yeah,
boys.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, yeah. So, what kind of men come to you?
Um, a lot of men, men that are high, like achieved a lot, that, and this is, I had this conversation this morning about the fuel to the fire of high achievement. So a lot of these men, like real estate or lawyers or doctors, athletes, these men have achieved greatly in their life. And what they've used to get the achievement is it stops working. So a lot of times hypervigilance is a big one. Hypervigilance with a little bit of a sprinkle of anxiety, sprinkle of fear. And so these men are recognizing that all the hypervigilance that created their success is now becoming destructive, and it's now either they've plateaued out, they're limiting themselves in relationship. You know, they're 40, 45, 50 years old, and they're like, you know, I can't sleep at night. I wake up and I power through the day with coffee all the time. Like there's these things, these little things happening in my relationship. I'm not present in my relationship because hypervigilance in a relationship doesn't have the same effect that hypervigilance would in building a company or creating massive wealth. Like hypervigilance, and this is the part of the thing that it's a massive block because it's survival mode on steroids. And so survival mode takes away from sexuality. It takes away from presence. It takes away from calmness. It takes away from any kind of centered approach to life. And so the thing that these men struggle with is how do I stop being hypervigilant and still maintain my lifestyle? And the shift is from hypervigilance into loving awareness. It's the same thing. It just says it doesn't have the fear-based, anxiety-driven thing, but you still get to be aware of everything and you know, quote unquote, handle your business, but also you get to have a much calmer and more present approach to everything. And
Mm.
so the men that come to me are the ones that they're exhausted. They're just they recognize that they've built a beautiful glass prison for themselves. And when I say that, like it's almost like a crystal palace. They built a immense like crystal palace for themselves that is turning into a prison because they're lacking an experience of the world that they desire to have.
I love that. I call it the golden cage. That
Yeah,
is kind of
it's same.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually what I was going for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I started my journey, I took away a lot of triggers and I felt, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
living life is. It was when COVID hit and it was like, oh my God, it feels so good. But I've had to learn to love my triggers, and I
Yeah.
actually do love my triggers.
Hmm.
I wish everyone loved their triggers, but not everyone does. Uh, So when I wrote to you, I wrote that I had a woman on that spoke about the well-fucked wife, and you talk
Yeah.
about well-fucked woman. Can you please
Yeah.
talk more about that?
Yeah. Oof. I could go on for hours about this. Yeah, a well-fucked woman. It's funny, whenever I post about that, I get about 50-50 of like just kind of not like hate, but like, what are you talking about? And the other 50 are like, yes, please, more of this. And the bottom line to a well-fucked woman, it begins with how open is she? And so how open is she relies on is how safe is she. So you know, when we and immediately when you use the term well-fucked woman, everyone goes to, oh, in the bedroom, I'm ravishing her, and we're having this amazing sex, and it's tantra, and it's shibari ropes, and it's all these things. Okay, to get to that point, there's a lot of things that have to happen first. One is like, how much safety are you creating? How much leadership are you creating? How much trust are you creating in the kitchen, or in the car on the way to get groceries, or out in the world when you're at dinner? Like, there is so many things that a woman is so hyper aware of of the world, because and the men need to know this, is that the experience that women have of the world is way, way different than the experience men have of the world. There's an inherent level of unsafety that women experience in the world that men know nothing about and can never know anything about. And it is the catcalls. It is the centuries of oppression and suppression and abuse, and the way that the patriarchy took, just like all the bad things that happened there. And so, as men, part of getting the woman to the place of even receiving being well fucked, like being open to being well fucked, is how aware are we of her experience of the world, that we can see things before she sees things. Because women, because of what I just said, see things before men. They're more energetically in tune. You guys are oracles. You are the oracles. You're energetically attuned to the world in a way that men are not. So the more that men can work on their attunement, range of attunement, to the woman in front of them, and then the world around them, the woman will feel safer, more dropped in, more expressed. You can tell in her shoulders and her breath. When I feel a woman drop in, it's like the energy just drops. And that's when like, okay, this woman's open to me. This woman feels safe with me. And the other side of that coin is true. When you notice her breath, when she's kind of on high alert and maybe like taking on the masculine role a little bit more, you're moving away from well fucked. When she can drop more into her feminine and you give her the space and the container and the culture to do that, you're moving closer to well fucked. So well fucked is, yes, it's all the things in the bedroom. Absolutely. And that's the end game of well fucked. The whole game is how much safety, how much joy, how much pleasure, how much intimacy, how much depth, how much presence can you create in life outside of that to facilitate what happens there.
Mm, yeah, I agree, because otherwise it feels like I'm, kind of popping from the bottom. Like I'm, I'm in the control. And then I actually don't even get the experience. Like I like to talk about someone can handcuff me and fuck me, but it doesn't mean I will have the experience. Like
Yeah.
it's so much more, because yeah, it's so true. And it can be from like moment to moment, day to day. And of course, I mean, I have to, do my part where,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. But yeah, it's so true. But I also talked about something that I thought was so interesting. It's safety, but we also want your danger.
Yes. This goes back to the beginning of our whole conversation about how men are so scared of their own danger. So and now, so yes, we talked about the well fucked, and it can be a very physical conversation. Absolutely. And the real conversation is in the energetics. It's in the soul level stuff. It's in the unspoken. It's in the noticing. So if a woman doesn't feel your danger, first of all, the woman knows the danger's there. But what
Yes.
she wants what she wants to feel is that you also know it's there. Because if then this is I did a reel about this yesterday about why passive men are scary to women.
Yes.
Because all what women see in a passive man is that guy has no knowledge or containment of his own danger. But when a man is not passive, and it doesn't mean the man's out there taking a baseball bat to everything. It means that the man is consciously aware and present to his ability to be dangerous, and he has it under control. And that's what the woman wants to feel. Because that is like that level of safety, that's when the womb drops, the yoni drops, like all of it opens up. When a woman can feel the man's danger, not so much in like she doesn't feel unsafe, she feels actually so safe in his danger because she knows that it will never be directed at her. And if worse comes to worse in the world, the man can be dangerous and protect.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. It comes up for me because I talked about this yesterday too with the man that was on. And it's so interesting because before, like I went 10 years in therapy and so many things before I really started to, awaken a few years ago only.
Yeah.
Um, but I have almost always been in relationships, and two of the men, like they are really caring and nurturing, and like they are amazing men. Then I had a shorter relationship where the sex was good, even though I was pretty suppressed myself, but
Hmm.
maybe it worked. But we had a relationship. I call it the fight and fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I started to, liberate my sexuality and remember my sexuality and, my rage and all the stuff. And I started to get attracted to and attract really stoic men
Mm.
a few years back. And I sometimes talk about like the bad boy or the Mr. Nice Guy. So I'm attracted to the bad boy because I feel the danger even more in him. I
Hmm.
can see like he's got so much maybe warrior, protector archetype, like archetypal energy. But it's as you say, like you can feel it, and some suppress it, some actually pours it out, in more or good or bad ways. Like
Hmm.
but it's as you say, because we want to be protected. I want to know that if a man comes into my home, like a burglar or whatever, my man
Yeah.
can beat him up like that.
Yeah.
That makes me feel safe. But it's as you say, I don't want it to sneak out on me. I don't want it to come out. And I had a lover, and he really contained it so much that he could. And I could see him, so I could ask him, like, are you angry? Because he would clench his fist and stuff like that. And I, of course, made my best to not poke on his wounds
Yeah.
because I could understand, like, when women yell, he goes into survival mode. So his brain, like, turns off. And I would never have poked that in him.
Yeah.
Really wasn't fully contained, but I want that energy. Like,
Yeah.
active as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not directed at me.
Right. Exactly.
And when I have more of, but what was interesting too, I don't know if you have seen this, those men actually also had very much of a pleaser in them. And I was surprised when I noticed this because I thought the Mr. Nice Guy that was purely like this soft,
Yeah.
but they have it too. We have it like crossing. So I was very amazed of how I could see them being pleasers. And the more powerful I felt, those men that could fall into their pleaser. And I'm like, so
Uh-huh.
yeah, so I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just my observations.
Well, I think it's beautiful that you bring that in because I think what you just pointed at was that it gets put in the black and white category of like the bad boy has no pleaser and the nice guy has no fight. That's not the nice guy. If you push him far enough, he will fight in a very, like you said, like an uncontrolled way. The bad boy has the fight, but he's also probably an element of like, if it gets too bad, I'm scared of myself. So I'm gonna please to sugarcoat it a little bit. And so I love that you brought that in because it's not black or white. Like they're both exist within there. It is a matter of know thyself, of like self-knowledge, of like of how much work have I done to tap into this myself. So every guy that I work with, one of the first things I tell him to do is go hit stuff, go hit a heavy bag, go to a fight club, find a jujitsu gym, find a Muay Thai gym, find somewhere where you can like tap into, go chop wood, or go hit a tire with a such, go do something primal that allows you to release this like inner remembrance, inner knowledge that I can fuck shit up if I have to, because that just knowing that lives inside of you, and then with fighting, like you're actually giving it a safe avenue of like, okay, I actually know, like it's not just flailing about. It's like, okay, I actually know this energy now has a place to go, and it's profound the changes that happen when men start. And you said earlier, fight fuck was like, and I think you were talking about the relationship was either you're fighting or you're fucking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
before I liberated my sexuality, the only time I had kind of good sex was with the man. We had so much. We fought and we fucked.
yeah, because it's the same energy.
Yeah.
It's a same kind of life force energy that is in that moment is uncontained. It's leaky, and for both of you probably. But like, so let's reel that back in and talk about the unleaky side of that is, and you'll hear this a lot in men's groups, is the better you fight, the better you fuck. So it doesn't mean the better I fight with my wife or my girlfriend. It means the better I can actually fight, like box or Muay Thai or kickbox or something like that. The better that I can do that, the more expressed and open I will be in the bedroom, and the more powerfully I will penetrate my woman.
But then what comes up for me is all the men that are like, I had a dip into the criminal world too, and they were
Yeah.
pretty well trained. They went to the gym, but they didn't feel safe.
Yeah, so that was me too. I've been arrested 25 times for various things. Um, and there's an element of, so there's a collective consciousness about criminals, right? Like, oh my God, he's a criminal. Like, I don't care how safe I feel, like, there's something in the back of my head that tells me, like, this guy. And so that is not just a, like a scapegoat for the criminal. Like the criminal actually has to do the work, deeper work than most, to shift his energy into containment, because he has an extra cross to bear. He has an extra hurdle to jump to get into the safety consciousness of the collective feminine, of the feminine in front of him. And so there's an element there that again, like it's how much work have we done before we meet each other, because we can there's so many levels of healing that happen. One is the individual healing, so the criminal coming out, rehabilitation, getting under control, becoming into conscious, and doing whatever it takes to get there. And then there's the healing that he gets to happen, and the woman gets to happen. How do we, the next level is when we're together, what happens? So if you're like, okay, this guy is maybe conscious, and everything's good except I feel something about him feels unsafe. That's your body. One is like, do you get to have a conversation about it? Or two, is it like, no, this guy just is not there. He just has not gotten to the point of being there.
Yeah, what feels unsafe for me, and I was feeling so shameful because I had been doing so much work, but I could understand that I had tapped deeper into myself, so I started to attract other things. So it was actually only 2 years ago this happened to me,
Hmm.
and I think this man that I was involved with could talk about his trauma. He was very he took no bullshit, although he had a pleaser too.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. But he didn't want to do anything about it. I think I understand now a lot of it in his victim consciousness, but he was like this. I want to, he was actually, a real warrior. So
Mm.
he went to Ukraine and he was like, I want to die when I'm fighting. Like he kind of didn't want to heal, I think. And
Yeah.
although he was conscious, but he was like, I
Yeah.
have already done the work, I'm so conscious and stuff like that. But what felt unsafe, and I mean the sex was amazing, but what felt unsafe was that he promised things he couldn't keep. He would put me in bad situations since he took me like he was a drug dealer and like took me to other drug dealers. So my conclusion, although I was super addicted, was that um, this man can't keep me safe because he's actually one putting me in danger.
Yeah. And that's his lack of awareness. You know, he has to be aware of of putting you in dangerous places. Because there's one thing to say, like, I'm going to protect you from dangerous places. There's another thing to say, like, if I bring you into dangerous places, am I really protecting you? And there's more work to be done there.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of, feeling like someone can protect you, but are they protecting me? Like, are you protecting me from you?
Yeah, yes. If you if you feel if the woman feels like I need to be protected from him, that's a big red flag, I would say. Is that there's something, and this is the woman's energetics, and this is the woman being hyper aware of things that the man, like, he may be okay, fully conscious, and there's an element of like, okay, I was a criminal and I am not here to host that energy anymore. I'm not here to carry that energy with me anymore. You don't need to I don't You don't need to be protected from me, and I can protect you from the world. Like, that's a big shift from I can protect you from the world, but also you need protection from me.
Yeah, because I play myself kind of with the criminal archetype because it's a lot of power in it
Oh
if you
yeah.
play around with it. So I
Yeah.
really like to, call in my gangsta energy because
Yeah, and that's beautiful. To call like, that's learning to relate to it all. That's learning to relate to your inner world in a way that is like befriending it in a way.
yeah, but and also as a woman to realize why am I falling into codependency with this kind of man? Because we were actually friends first, and then I became super addicted. Like I'm like, what? It was almost, I had to end it, and it felt I wasn't in love with him even, but I was so addicted. Like it
Yeah.
awful. It was like, it was awful.
Hmm.
But it was a good experience, but it became so like, oh my God, how someone, and he was like, I can understand why you're acting kind of like a girlfriend because, and in hindsight, I'm like, because you fucking said same things and pushed on my buttons. So I
Yeah.
like, and I was so mind fucked, but I could feel like this isn't good for me, so I need to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, yeah. So you've been in that world too.
I've dipped my toe in that water. Yeah. And mostly it was around addiction, drug and alcohol addiction. Like, it was all kind of like DUIs, drunk in public, disorderly conduct, that type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. He was an addict too. So, anyways, we don't have to talk more about him. But Sam, this podcast is my healing. Like
Mm,
to be able to sit here with you and like
yeah.
able to debunk this, and for
Yeah.
others here, because I know others need to hear it too. Um,
There's such there I love that you brought that in because there's it's so healing when we can get to the point of talking about these things without like a massive charge behind it. And I think that's healing for people too, because a lot of people they avoid the trauma because the experience they've had is that, oh, I bring it up and I talk about it, and I immediately feel unsafe. I feel out of body. I feel like all the things that trauma does. And so for us to sit here and talk about how, like, just simply talk without any charge about traumatic experiences gives people a target. They're like, oh my gosh, like, it can get there. Like, some of the things we could talk about, like really, really terrible things, I'm sure. And we could talk about them and people could say, okay, so like it's okay to talk about in a place that is safe. Like we're in a very public setting right now talking about traumatic things, but this didn't start here. Like this is not the first time either of us have talked about these things, right? We had to go into, whether it was therapy or coaching or really, really safe containers and begin to talk and begin to like be held in these things to get to a point where it frees, the body is free from it. And so that we can sit here and have conversations about it that are next level healing for both of us to sit here. I mean, this is healing for me too, to sit here and talk about these things. And it's not, like I said, it takes work to get to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, you can feel when it shifts, truly. And honestly, it feels sometimes like I've been to hell and back to reclaim myself.
Yeah.
And as I say, you talk about the edges, and even the edges can sometimes be addictive.
Yes.
I've gotten lost. It's interesting because what I was talking about actually was in 2023 when I was doing so much shadow work and pulled everything up. That's when I started to have it in my outside reality too. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? I'm going backwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, now I feel like, okay. It had to, happen in some sense because I know you talk about the book Existential Kinks too, and
Yeah.
for me, I came to the point actually where I actually kind of allow myself to have these experiences and love them, and
Mm.
I felt like I have made a lot of turn-ons to turn-offs through just indulging in the experience, although it's totally fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole concept was really a game changer for me. Like reading that book and then doing the practices, but also just on, like on a macro level of, okay, like no problem, like it's here. I'm gonna just allow it for a minute or 5 or 10 or 15, whatever it is, a few days, and then it's amazing how on the other side of that it just dissolves.
Hmm. Yeah, because I don't want to only sit on my hands and like keep myself away from the things I wanted to resolve in here. It's such
Yes.
a big difference.
Yep.
And I want to I think it's so amazing to like because the turn on itself is so, I mean, it's so much potency and energy in it.
Yeah. Everything has a life force, right? And everything wants to be seen and acknowledged. That's what, life force, one of the things about life force is the more that we can see it, acknowledge it, harness it, the more free we become. And so really those things that we're avoiding, like not allowing, exiling, are the things that control us, the things that keep us in prison. That's why I say, that's the thing about edges, is that if we're willing to go to our edges and do the edge hunting and be there for a minute and allow the edge to expand without us contracting, the edges stop being prisons. But if we're just like, if we know the edges are there and we don't do anything about them, the lane is just ever shrinking because the edges will start to, like, like in Star Wars with the contractor, the trash compactor, like it will start closing in on us.
Yeah. Because your past, as you were talking about, like I know that you healed a lot of things. Can you, because I also know that, are you married? Are you married to
Yeah,
your, yeah.
yeah, I'm married. Yeah,
So if you would, I would love to hear a little bit more about your background and your story and up to until you met your wife, since
yeah,
I love relationships. I love, sacred.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I really started doing this work in 2007, which is when, well, 2006 or seven, which is when the drugs and alcohol started to get really bad in my life. I started to have a lot of consequences for it, and for a long time, I went to AA and I went to rehabs, and like I mentioned, I was in and out of jail, and I couldn't quite get around the concept of life without that. And so, being in rehabs and in the rooms of AA, I did that from 2000 2006 until 2000, 18, 19. So um, I always, for the first 5 of those years, 2007 to 2012, I was sitting there and I'm looking around and hearing these stories about all these addicts and alcoholics that have, childhood abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, alcoholic homes. And I'm sitting there with the same consequences, maybe even more than most consequences. And I'm just like, I don't understand why this is me. Like, how am I here? And so, I couldn't get my head around, like, I was like, it's not me. I don't know what's going on. It's like, I have a bad habit, like just making up all these stories, which was keeping me from looking at the real thing. And so finally in 2012, when I was 38, was like, I was finally to the point where I'm like, all right, like enough of this, like wondering why I'm here. Like, I'm here. And why am I here? And so what it forced me to do was like, okay, so I had all these stories of alcoholic homes, physical, verbal, sexual abuse, but that's not me. That wasn't my story. So I'm like, okay, well, what about my childhood? And so finally in 2012, I said, okay, so let me, like, my childhood, if you had asked me up to that point, was like, it was great. My parents were married my whole childhood. They got divorced when I was in college. Married, like happy. There was parties all the time. We took trips. I played tennis and golf every summer, and like it was a really, really good childhood. So I thought, and it was like none of that's untrue. It was all there. The love was there. The everything was there, and I was really sick. I had really, really severe asthma, really, really severe food allergies, eczema all over my body. I had this tendency to choke on my food a lot, so I had the Heimlich maneuver done on me a lot when I was like, eating steak or chicken or something. Things would get stuck in my throat. And so underneath all the really good stuff that was happening was this experience of two things. One was really intense fear of the world. Like, I was in the hospital probably 3 to 4 times a year for anywhere from three days to 2 weeks with asthma attacks or allergic reactions. And that was for the first 13 or 15 years of my life. It was like every year was that. And so I kind of lived with this anticipation of a near-death experience happening. Like, I'm going to have these, at 2 in the morning, I'm going to have an asthma attack. I'm going to go to a birthday party and I'm going to eat a peanut by accident. And so I had this immense level of fear and just distrust of the world and my own body. Second thing is that I felt extremely different than all of my peers. So my peers they didn't have the same experience that I was having of asthma and food allergies. So seemingly they could go run around. I grew up in Vermont, so it's a lot of hay and farms and all that stuff. And so my friends would all just go running around and not have asthma attacks and eat cake and not have allergic reactions. And so what I made up in my body, and this is from doing a lot of work. I didn't know this at the time, but not only was I different, I was broken. And so with brokenness comes shame. I am different, so I'm ashamed of who I am. And then there was bullying that was involved. Like, some kids would make fun of me for, they throw peanuts at me or pretend to have an asthma attack. There was things that were happening. And, what I learned about shame as I started to do this work was that shame begins when, as children, 0 to 15, 16, we try to get a basic need met, and we feel rejection or humiliation around that. So an example of that for me was my breath. Like, I was trying to breathe and I would feel humiliation around it. The rejection thing is, basic need is human connection. So this is why rejection is big for men, is that, from age, essentially 11 or 12 till ever, we are the ones that are kind of dedicated to say, go and ask the girl out, go and ask her to the dance, go and make the first move. And so that puts us in a position of, especially as teenagers, potential for more rejection. So when the rejection happens, we're broken, we're shameful, we're not worthy, not enough, like all the things come roaring in. And so a lot of the work I do with men, because I had to do this myself, was not so much on 0 to 8, but on 12 to 18. What was happening at 12 to 18? Like, what was going on with your experience of the social network in your world, of the interaction with women, interaction with friends? What was going on there? And so this was all the things that I had to look at, and I didn't even know. I just thought it was good. I didn't know. And so looking back at my childhood, um, I started to unearth all this trauma, and I didn't really have any, like, I had a couple big T traumas, but it was mostly the little T, the continuous experience of trauma, the asthma attacks every spring and fall, and the allergic reactions and all that stuff. And so that gave me a lot of insight as to, so Gabor Mate has a great quote about addiction is, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. So usually with addiction, people are like, why are you drinking so much? Why are you doing so many drugs? Like, what? Just stop drinking, just stop doing drugs. Never really addressing the pain. So finally I got to the point where, like, I stopped drinking, and okay, great. But then there was still depression, there was still anxiety, there was still massive amounts of shame, feeling different, feeling broken. And so I just started to, like, just go in and explore all these things. And it all led back to this childhood experience that I had been kind of just not really, I didn't really stuff it or swipe it under the rug because I really wasn't aware of it, but it was just kind of in the periphery. And so at 38, I finally got in here, and I did AA for 5 or 6 more years. And then after a while, it started to it lost its luster for me. It didn't stop working, but it felt like I was kind of stagnant. And so that's when I stepped out of AA and got onto the plant medicine path with, ayahuasca and bufo and mushrooms, and basically what I do now with a lot of men's work and a lot of, like, real deep inner wilderness work. And so that meant going back and looking at, so I thought that, one of the things that was happening to me in AA was that I had made up that I had healed my addict, that version of me. But what really happened was that I just had kind of pushed it to the side and exiled it. And so then when I stepped out of AA and started into the plant medicine path, I still had a conversation that I'm doing drugs again. It wasn't medicine yet. It wasn't to the point where I felt, I knew it was medicine, but I still, because I had exiled that version of me, I hadn't reconciled that conversation within me. So all the guilt and shame that I carried as an addict came roaring in when I started using plant medicines. And it took a few years of doing this work to clear all the guilt and the shame, to the point where in 2022, I developed cancer in my mouth for the third time, which the cancer came the first 2 times when I was deep in my addiction. And so as I was healing this addict version of me and this shame that I attached to it, the cancer came in my mouth. And so they told me, they're like, yep, radiation, chemo, we're going to get you on a track to do that. And I was like, no, we're not. That is not going to be it. I was like, this is not a physical thing. I'm 100%, this is spiritual and emotional, and I'm going to purge it from my body. And I got diagnosed on November 1st, and then December 22nd, I had a biopsy done, and there was no cancer. Yeah. And so, yeah. And so, like, this has been the work of, like, just going back through looking at all the dots that are connected, looking at all the ways that these things led to this thing, and just learning why I showed up in the way I did, and all the coping mechanisms that I had developed to stay safe. Alcoholism, and you'll hear a lot of addicts, some addicts talk about this, is how addiction or alcoholism actually saved their life because it allowed them to cope with a world they could not cope with. The other option would have been suicide. And again, it still gets to that. My sister drank herself to death because she was so silent about it and didn't speak about it. I chose to speak about it and chose to heal it. And so, all these things that I had developed, anxiety, depression, shame, all of it came in to protect me from something. And then, as I talked about with these men that I work with, it didn't work anymore. It moved into causing problems in my relationships. It moved into causing problems in how I show up in my career and my purpose. It turned from a driver, it turned into a block. It turned destructive. And so once I cleared it, like, that's been my work. Is just now there's nothing big anymore, really. There's littler or less big things that, again, these parts of us, the shame part, the addict part, the really, really sick little kid part, they're not going anywhere. I just know how to hold them now. And so they don't run the show and they don't take over. And yeah, they'll still chime in every once in a while and be like, hey, remember me? I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you. Like, uh-huh, I see you. What do you need? What are you here to teach me? And so there's ways to transmute it and alchemize it now that I didn't have before. So I think that kind of covers the how I got to this moment.
Yeah, I think I've heard it, I don't know, on your Instagram, maybe.
Yeah, I
But
talk about it.
I
Yeah,
think it's just so amazing how fast like the cancer was gone.
yeah, that blew my mind too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's just to think like it's what we've been sold, the bill of goods we've been sold about all of that stuff is just not true.
Yeah, body keeps score.
Body keeps the score, and the biology of belief. That's another great
Yeah,
concept. It's the epigenetics of it.
yeah. And when you healed, like how are you said it affected your relationships, and
Yeah.
now you have an amazing wife. So like
Yes.
how did that tell
Yeah.
me more.
So yeah, great question. So yeah, so I had a so one thing about being so sick as a kid was that I learned there's another kind of tributary there that struggle is a love language. So the more I'm struggling, the more attention I get, the more love. The more I'm in victim, the more love I get, the more attention I get. And also, if I am to survive, I need to be saved because that was my experience as a kid. Like if I hadn't had a mom and a dad that would, spring to my rescue at 2 in the morning and rush me to the hospital,
Mm.
who knows? So I had these these phantom programs installed that struggle means love, and if I'm to survive, I need to be saved because of just distrust in my whole body. And so that showed up in relationships as I would create problems so that there would be attention. I would do things like there's one relationship I had where things were great. Things were really good for about a year and a half. And then I had some things like this program kicked on at the time I was unaware of. I was living in San Francisco, California, and I said, you know what, San Francisco's the problem. I don't like it here. I'm not really happy in this relationship. I was, but I didn't think I was. And so I was like, I'll move to Denver. And so I moved to Denver, and the relationship fell apart. My career fell apart. I was still depressed. And so I would do things, and I come crawling back. So what would happen is that I would get in a relationship, I would fall in love. As soon as I hear the words love, what I in my body, okay, great. So you're responsible for me now. So no matter
Mm.
what I do, you'll save me. And
Mm.
so now I start creating problems to reasons for you to save me. And it just got real shadowy and real destructive. And it was a mother thing. It was mothering. It was like I would ask this woman to be my mother and save me from an asthma attack, which, not really an asthma attack, but something. And
Yeah.
so what happened is I would then get avoidant because either I wasn't getting saved the way I liked it, or you were seeing me in a way that I didn't want to be seen. And so I would back off and get avoidant attachment, break up, create destruction. She meets somebody else, or a week, 3 or 4 weeks goes by and I miss her and I'm like, wait, I fucked up. Like, oh my God, what did I do? I come back with massive codependent tendencies. Now I'm like people pleasing. I'm,
Mm.
fawning. I'm doing all these things to like, just don't leave me. Just don't, please. Like, I'll do anything. And, becoming like what on the surface could be considered like, oh my God, an amazing boyfriend. But in reality, like my needs aren't being met. My danger's not there. Like, there's nothing there. It's just all I'm doing is like, just please don't leave me. That's all.
Mm.
So in 2023, I was in a relationship and it ended all of a sudden at Burning Man. And so the next 3 months, I committed to grieving everything that I had left ungrieved and uprooting this pattern that had been present since my divorce in 2004, so 20 years of this same four major relationships, same pattern. Fall in love, become avoidant, destruct, running back, codependent. A year later, she breaks up with me because I never recovered from the destruction. I'm like, what? This is like, holy shit. For 20 years, I've been doing this cycle. And so I spent 3 months clearing. So I left my marriage in 2004. So I made up that, oh, I'm good. I don't have to grieve that. That's on you. I
Mm.
decided to leave. So, you know what? I'm free of that.
Did you deflect everything?
Yeah, I just was like, you know what? I'm good. best decision I ever made. I felt free. Like I didn't understand that there was an identity that existed there. There was a version of me that existed there. There was the pain that I had brought to that marriage that I had to grieve and get right with, that I
Mm.
had never done for 20 years. And then my dad passed away in 2015. I made up that I was too busy to really fully grieve that. I did the funeral and like spent time in sorrow and all that, but I never fully like allowed the grief to land. For that in 2015, my sister passing away in 2018, the other relationships that had fallen apart, that I was deeply heartbroken about, like I just had never given myself the space to grieve it. And so I did that for 3 months. And then I had known my current wife. We had met before Burning Man that year, but never really connected. Like had a few conversations, but and then in November of 2023, we started hanging out. Like just as friends, we would go do hot cold therapy or hang out in the park. And then one thing led to another, and we're like, holy crap, what's happening here? Like there's some definite energy here. Like we just like the hanging out went from like every 2 weeks to once a week to twice a week to 3 times a week. We're like, what are we doing? And so what had happened is that I was so close to like all those things that I'd mentioned, the grieving, the pattern, the cycles, was so close to the surface that it didn't take much for me to just look at it, be in it, address it, see it, feel it, and purge it. And
Mm.
so it was a pretty accelerated grieving process because I was like, heartbroken. I'm like, I'm gonna be in like my history had shown like it's gonna be about a year of like, I'll be in this like missing her and all this, and then at like 3 months, I forget what was happening, but I think I might have been at a party that she was at, and I was like, I feel nothing. Like I feel no charge. Like I feel very complete with that experience. And I got to the point of gratitude for her and all she showed me and what the relationship did for me and how it catalyzed me into being the man that I am now. And that's when my wife came in, and we both talk about this, how we had both came in so clean of like nothing. There was nothing that we had to like, no loops we had to close, no unfinished business we had to take care of. Like it was just two clean people coming together and allowing love to come in. And it's been like that ever since.
Oh, I love that.
Mm,
And
thank
you're
you.
also
Yeah.
breaking like the story of how we need to date, find the person.
Yeah. Yeah, we came together. We met in August of 2023. We came together like late November, early December of 2023. We were engaged in May and we got married in June.
Because I love that because I created so many rules.
Yep. Oh, I know. We all do.
I don't want to get into a situationship. I don't want to
Uh-huh.
but at the same time and everything, we should date, it should be slow and like stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I want the wild man that takes me, like right me in the bedroom. Like where do I find
Yeah.
him? Or attract him.
Yeah. And this is what you get to do. This is what my wife did, and it's what we all get to do, really. Hold that vision, relentlessly hold that vision. And the more that you can create familiarity in your nervous system with that experience, the closer you get to it.
Because I don't want to have I don't want to have meek sex in the bedroom.
No, you don't want meek anything. Don't want mediocre laughter. You don't want mediocre is not the vibe. The vibe is like this or not at all. Like I know what I want, I know what I'm worthy of, I know what I desire, and if it's not that, I'm okay saying no.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm truly at that point. So yeah.
good. That
So
you're
I'm
there. Then
really
now all it is just remain open and be like, he's coming. I know he's coming. Yeah.
yeah. But I could see the other day how I started to wire, this came up for me. I started to wire playfulness and my wild sexuality with something bad. So I had to,
Mm,
know, see like I don't have to be X, Y, Z to like this, or like it doesn't mean that I have to have the criminal, like
yeah.
to truly,
Yeah.
because I want what I want, and I
Yep.
want it.
That's it. And that's all you need to know. I want
Yeah.
what I want because that's what I want, and I will wait until I get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I love that.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, then, I think we are complete.
Good. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. And truly, like, when you said it was healing, I completely agree. It's like every time these conversations happen, they get to be healing. Like, and
Mhm.
just knowing that, like, every time is like, whether we see it or not, like, it's just a shedding or a softening or a more allowing of the experience.
Yeah, and I'm retreating right now to find my own voice because it's like you're saying now how you met and like I want what I want and to truly step into my authentic power as a coach and a mentor. It's so much noise out there.
There is
But
so much
I
noise
really,
out there, very little noise in here.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sam. And I'll put
Yeah,
your handles here so people can
great.
find you and your amazing things. So,
Yeah, and thank you too, Anna. Thank you for creating this space. Thank you for co-creating this conversation with me. It's then inviting me on. Thank you. It's been beautiful and super grateful for this.
yeah.